Hey curious cats, my name is Sahara. Welcome to that True Crime channel. Let's get into it. For tonight's case, we're going to Nepal, but I need to give you some context beforehand. And the context is Couchsurfing. What is Couchsurfing? Couchsurfing is an online platform for travelers. The website was created in 2004, and the concept basically was for travelers, usually with a small budget, to be graciously hosted by locals. Hospitality, as it no longer exists, at least in Europe, maybe also in the US. Even though it used to be very common for centuries, travelers would frequently come to a halt in a certain town where they would ask for bed and board to a generous soul. This practice has not gone extinct in some parts of the world, just FYI. You're probably wondering, if you're from a Western country, you're probably wondering, aren't people scared? It's the question that I've been asked 1,000 times, if not more, because I'm a host myself, and sometimes I couch surf or I Airbnb, especially considering the fact that I'm a woman and I often travel by myself. And the answer is no, some people are not scared. Now picture these two scenarios. In the first one, you're the host, you fear for your safety, you don't know the person you're going to be hosting, they can kill you in your sleep, they can steal your laptop, your PlayStation, your cell phone. Usually people fear theft. Now imagine you're the guest. You also fear for your safety. You fear that the host can kill you in your sleep. They can steal whatever you have, whatever you're carrying with you for your trip, money, laptop, whatever it is. The fear goes both ways. So two negatives make a positive, they cancel each other out. But on a more serious note, I get why people would think it's scary, but in my opinion, it's a mindset. It's just like when people tell you, don't go to Mexico, they will kidnap you and harvest your organs, or you'll get in the middle of a shooting between two drug cartels and you'll die. I spent an entire month in Mexico and nothing ever happened to me. I mean, only good stuff. Fear paralyzes you. It prevents you from doing things like traveling, meeting people, experimenting life, expanding your horizons, pushing your own limits. And I insist even more on this because you know where the story is going. But watch till the end and I will explain to you how people use this platform in a smart and safe way, because I know you still have doubts. Our case is the story of Dahlia Yehia, an Egyptian American young woman who was raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Kalamazoo is such a funny name, isn't it? I wasn't able to find her exact date of birth. Most articles explained that at the time of the events, she was 25. Some of them said 27, but most of them said 25, so we'll stick with that. So yeah, there wasn't much information on her background and her, personal history, but by my calculations, she was either born in 1989 or 1990. I also don't know if she was born in Egypt and then they all immigrated to the USA, or if she was born in the USA after her parents had immigrated from Egypt. I think she was born in the USA, but I just wanted to specify that I'm not 100% sure. Her mother is a doctor and her father works in healthcare services, and at some point, so they decide to emigrate to the USA, to Michigan, where Dahlia will spend her childhood, teenage years, and early adult years. People who know Dahlia describe her as a gentle soul, very altruistic, very caring of others. In her blog, she writes, "I've been drawing since I was a kid. Art was always my favorite subject in school. I went to college for engineering and physics, and after 1 year of science and math classes, I took an art class and fell in love. That was the last time I ever took any class related to engineering. My favorite medium is oil paint and charcoal. However, since I got a tablet, my most recent work has been digital." I really like the fox painting, and this one too. It looks like either veins or trees. She also drew a tattoo for a friend who's in a rock band. One of her teachers reported that Dahlia started being interested in humanitarian issues after a member of a charity called For One World came to her class one day and spoke to them about children soldiers in Uganda. She was particularly moved by this, so much so that she dedicated an entire portfolio to those kids soldiers, and the charity actually used one of her paintings. After high school, Dahlia briefly studied in Quito, Ecuador. When she got her college degree, she found a job as an art instructor in Phoenix, Arizona. She decided to drive there solo And in her blog, she writes, "So in the midst of all my post-graduation anxiety, I packed up my car and drove across the country from Kalamazoo, Michigan to Phoenix, Arizona. It was a 36-hour drive through snowstorms, mountains, and beautiful landscapes. The trip was pretty terrifying. The longest I'd ever driven at one time was 6 hours. I didn't know anybody where I was going, and to say that I'm awkward and shy is the understatement of the year. But this trip was just what I needed to feel like the last 4 years of college was good for something." She continues explaining in this post on her blog that upon arriving in Phoenix, she had to live in her car for a bit and she would hang out in coffee shops while she was looking for housing. Then she found this ad on Craigslist and started living with two roommates, two women. One of them was the girlfriend of the guitar player in a rock band, the one that she would draw a tattoo for. This encounter inspired many of her future paintings after she was invited to their concerts. And the other roommate was actually running the Phoenix branch of an organization called, I think it's called Raw. It's an organization that promotes artists from different fields. Happy coincidence. After 1 year in Arizona, Dahlia finds herself to be a nomadic person. She lived in New York, in Austin, and Boston, but she wasn't really satisfied with her job as a teacher. For one, she found that many of her students had severe family issues, such as, drug abuse or neglect from the parents, and she just felt powerless when they would come to her for help. And on top of that, she wasn't working in the best conditions because sometimes the schools would provide little to no equipment for her art classes. After 3 years of teaching, during which she managed to save a little bit of money, she decided to take a break and travel. First, she goes to Michigan to visit family, and then she flies to Thailand. During this trip, she decided to become a volunteer. In April 2015, there was an earthquake in Nepal, 7.8 on the Richter scale. 9,000 people died and almost 3 million lost their homes. And as is often the case during such events, there were a lot of organizations and charities who started collecting money and they started distributing foods and medicine, etc. All of a sudden, there were hundreds of volunteers who came from Western countries to also lend a hand. But when that happens, a lot of organizations actually disapprove when so many spontaneous volunteers join because usually they lack experience and skills. In reality, these people are more mouths to feed. Their intentions are good, they're honorable, but in reality, they can cause more problems than they solve. Some even refer to them as the second disaster. Dr. Tom Kirsch, who is director for the Center of Refugee and Disaster Response at Hopkins University, expressed himself on the matter, and he said what he calls spontaneous volunteers should be cautious and careful. In his opinion, it's best if someone volunteers through an organized structure because an organized structure can provide safety and help. Sometimes help is needed in war zones, so obviously it's very dangerous. Sometimes it's needed in places that are completely different from where the volunteers come from, or sometimes the volunteers have no experience with traveling, so they come and they're not prepared. So he thinks it's best for everybody, the volunteer and the country that's facing the disaster, if everything is organized and structured. Dahlia arrived in Nepal mid-July 2015, so about 3 months after the earthquake happened, and she had the intention of helping locals face this catastrophe. Upon arriving in Kathmandu, she meets a fellow traveler from Australia who's a backpacker and who also wants to be a spontaneous volunteer, as Dr. Kirsch would say. Both of them get in touch with a local who is running a relief effort, and he sends them to the town of Gorka. Once they arrive there, they're accompanied by a local guide and they help as much as they can, but after 4 days they decide to leave. The Australian guy is going back to Kathmandu, whereas Dahlia is heading to a city called Pokhara, where she will arrive by bus on August the 5th. Pokhara is a beautiful city surrounded by mountains. There's also a gorgeous lake nearby. It's a city many tourists find appealing. Dahlia sends a message to a friend back in the USA, Robert. She tells him she found a host through Couchsurfing. She met him and his girlfriend over dinner, and she said he was very nice. She didn't give his name or his address where she was going to be hosted for a few days, but she sounded like she felt safe and she was confident in what she was doing. And again, you probably have questions, but bear with me. I'll explain in the last chapter. The last chapter is going to be crucial for you to understand why she felt safe in the company of a total stranger. So Dahlia and this friend from the US, Robert, were texting back and forth, And one day he sent her a picture of a wedding he attended, but she didn't respond. So he sends a message saying, "Are you still alive?" A message each one of us has probably sent to a friend who wasn't responding, except Dahlia doesn't respond for days. At first, Robert thinks that Nepal has just been through an earthquake, so maybe there's a power cut, it's possible. But more days go by and he still wonders why she hasn't responded yet. Maybe she's sick, maybe her phone got stolen, maybe she was kidnapped. The scenarios he's, thinking of become more and more sinister, so much so that he decides to contact Couchsurfing. Over the phone, Couchsurfing help desk says to Robert that there was no activity on Dahlia's profile for the past 12 days. As a member of Couchsurfing, I'm telling you, 12 days when you're traveling, especially if you're on a budget, is a very long time. I will explain in the last chapter. So Couchsurfing offers to get in touch with the last people that she was in contact with in the hope of, surfing on their couches. So they say to Robert, we'll email them, we'll get back to you. But in the meantime, if you're that worried, we invite you to contact the local authorities. But before he does, Robert calls Dahlia's family only to realize, sadly, that they too have had no news for almost 2 weeks now. Everybody starts to freak out, everybody's worried sick, so Dahlia's parents contact the American embassy in Kathmandu. Her friends create a Facebook page as well as missing person flyers that they distribute to Nepal with the help of American expats. They also have the brilliant idea to contact Couchsurfing members in Pokhara in the hope of finding someone who maybe was in touch with her, someone who's seen her, someone who's hosted her or is hosting her. At the end of the month of August, a certain Narayan Paudel, I don't know how to pronounce his family name, so I'll call him Narayan. Narayan replies to Robert, because he's a host in Pokhara, and he says that he saw Dahlia in the morning of August the 7th. He says she mentioned a hike that she intended to take on her way to Kathmandu, but after this last exchange, he didn't see her. Robert gives this information to the embassy. He gives them the name of the man who apparently is the last person to have seen her. So obviously police follow up on this lead. They visit Narayan in his tiny apartment in Pokhara. When they question him, he explains that he hosted Dahlia for 3 nights, which is quite common on Couchsurfing. He specifies that he didn't see her much because he's a student, he's studying to get a bachelor's degree, and he also works part-time as an English teacher in a primary school, so he doesn't have much time. He's super busy during the day, so he would see her in the morning and in the evening. So the police officers then leave. At first glance, it looks like this lead is a dead end. The investigation as to Dahlia's disappearance continues. Her family members and friends, and again, this shows the value of friendship. I mean, her friends did so much to find her, just like Natsumi Kogawa, just like Grace Millane, but I digress. So I was saying, her friends and family had the idea to contact Apple because Dahlia owns an iPhone. So they're like, maybe they can do something to help us. Apple confirms that with the IMEI reference, they can give them some information. So the IMEI is a sort of plate number to a phone that is unique and that can help trace the phone in case it's, for example, stolen or lost. So Apple communicates that reference to the family and friends of Dahlia, and in turn they give this piece of information to the embassy, and then the embassy gives it to the CIB, which is the Central Investigation Bureau, which is the equivalent of the FBI. They investigate and they find out that a SIM card was inserted in the phone between August 18th and August 21st, many days after Dahlia was reported missing. Through the phone number, investigators are hoping to find the owner of that SIM card, and they do. Can you guess who it is? Narayan, the Couchsurfing host. Obviously, police officers go back to his place, and this time they're like, "Spill, we know about the iPhone. Tell us what happened." And what he answers is, the phone was charging, she left, she forgot her phone, and when he realized it was too late, she was already gone. So he did try to use the phone, but he couldn't because he wasn't able to override, the passcode, the PIN. When they ask him where the phone is, he says, "It fell out of my pocket one day." Like, we believe that. First of all, he received a message from Robert, her friend, who was asking where she was, so he freaked out. And second thing, it was the second time police officers were at his place questioning him about Dahlia, so double dose of freaking out. I'm sure he either got rid of it or he sold it, but I'm gonna go on a limb here and say he got rid of it. Narayan is arrested for theft. Obviously, police officers don't believe a word he's saying. And while he's in police custody, he maintains this version of events. I just met her, I haven't done anything wrong, she just slept here 3 nights, and then I don't know where she went. I should specify here that Robert thought it was weird that, one, Narayan didn't seem too concerned about Dahlia's whereabouts. He receives a message from family members and friends saying that they've had no news for days, and he doesn't even ask, like, keep me posted or I hope she's okay. He doesn't seem too concerned. As a host myself, I would be worried sick for my guests. Actually, that happened to me a couple times. There was this one time I was hosting a Korean woman. She went out and she said she was gonna come back around 1, like midnight 1 with the last metro, and she didn't. And I was just so worried. Anything could have happened to her. She came back at 3 a.m., which I didn't mind, but still, I was super worried. The other thing that wasn't making sense to Robert is the fact that she supposedly forgot her phone, which, I'm sorry, it just cannot happen. You travel on a budget, you're relying on the generosity of people, locals, to host you for free. You have to get in touch with them with your phone. You need a phone. When you're traveling, your phone is your life, not only to find hosts or hostels or hotels or whatever it is. You need it to, organize, plan, meet up with people. I've left stuff behind like shampoo and t-shirts and stuff that I loved, but I never would forget my phone and my passport. They're the most precious things that you have with you when you're traveling. Detectives give Narayan a lie detector test and he fails, which doesn't surprise me. They keep pressing him for the truth and eventually he confesses. He says they were walking together along the river one day and he threw her over the bridge. It doesn't make sense to officers because the bridge he's talking about has a sort of safety rail that's just way too high. It would have been impossible for him to just throw someone overboard. If that was really what happened, Dahlia would probably have been able to, to fight him back and not be thrown over the bridge. Just doesn't make sense. It will take 2 days for Narayan to reveal what really happened. So you remember his apartment is tiny, it's a studio, there's only one main room. He has 2 beds, but they're in the same room. The first night of Dahlia's stay at his apartment, Narayan woke up in the middle of the night. He took a hammer and he smashed her head twice. Then he took a piece of wood and he smashed her head again 3 times. Afterwards, he took the body and placed it in a bag where he used to keep rice. He took the bag to the river and dumped it. Then he went home, he cleaned all the blood, and he took Dahlia's possessions along with the murder weapons and the bedsheet that was covered in blood, and he went back to the river to get rid of it all. Police officers started to look for Dahlia's body. On the riverbanks, they found some items that belonged to her, shoes, a pair of pants. They also recovered the bedsheet covered in blood. Months later, the body of a woman that was badly decomposed was found, but the autopsy revealed that it was not Dahlia's body. However, DNA testing on the blood that was found inside Narayan's apartment revealed that it was Dahlia's blood. While Narayan is awaiting trial, or I think he was in police custody. Yeah, I think he was in police custody. One day he asks to go to the bathroom. He manages to get to the roof of the building somehow, and he throws himself off. He tries to commit suicide. From my findings, it's not funny. There was a police officer who said, he was interviewed and he said that he was tempted to leave him there to die, like the piece of shit that he was. But of course, they took him to hospital and he was going to stay there for 40 days. 40 days during which, obviously, nobody was fighting to go visit him. Only his uncle did. And when he got there, he begged his nephew to tell him the truth. Did you kill her? But Narayan said he didn't kill her. He said he was innocent and he was coerced into that confession. Hashtag police brutality. To be fair, according to some of the articles I read on the matter, it is not uncommon for police officers in Nepal to use force when they want to get a confession from a suspect. So, just saying. A friend of Narayan was also interviewed and he said he couldn't believe what happened. He said that his friend was very nice, very generous, and he couldn't picture him doing something as horrific as this. And on top of that, Narayan's Couchsurfing profile had many references from other members saying only good things about him. Robert visited Narayan in prison. Narayan kept saying he was innocent. He said that police beat him and they electrocuted him. I have a hard time with this word. They hit him in the groin. He just couldn't take the pain anymore, so he gave a first version that police didn't seem to like, and then he came up with the other one, the I beat her in my apartment while she was sleeping, because he thought that would satisfy them. He even went as far as claiming that he'd never attempted suicide. It was a police officer who pushed him off the building. I'm not sure I believe that. I mean, police brutality, I can accept it, but killing suspects? I don't think so. Just FYI, this encounter with Robert happened before DNA proved that it was Dahlia's blood in his apartment. Maybe police beat you, but I don't think they planted blood in your apartment. Also, they did not invent the cash that was withdrawn by Dahlia on the day of the murder. The investigation revealed that she went to an ATM, she withdrew 5,000 rupees, which is like 50 US dollars, I think. It's quite a bit of money in Nepal, and especially during a natural disaster, so the motive seems to have been financial, the iPhone and the money. However, police speculated that maybe he tried to have intercourse with her, that she refused, and maybe they had a fight over this. Maybe he even tried to rape her. There was an altercation, and then he killed her. And the money and the iPhone, there was just a bonus. At least that's a theory that detectives had. In July 2016, almost 1 year after Dahlia Yehia disappeared, Narayan Paudel was sentenced to life in prison. I don't really know how sentencing works in Nepal. I think he is gonna stay in prison for the rest of his life. I hope he stays in prison for the rest of his life. And this concludes the tragic case of Dahlia Yehia, whose body was still not recovered. And as I promised in the beginning of this video, I'm going to clarify a few things here. First of all, I want to say that similar tragic events have happened through Airbnb, Uber, Craigslist, Tinder, and I'll probably do the Tinder case very soon. Any app that connects people has the potential for tragedy. Things can go wrong. It's not because the app or the website isn't safe. When something bad happens, it's nothing but a reflection of how crazy the world can be. Now think about it for a second. Does it mean that murders should only happen in real life? Does it mean murders shouldn't happen when people meet through an app? It doesn't make any sense. It's like saying murders should happen in a dark alleyway on a Sunday evening. Doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's because internet is still a pretty recent tool, and I think maybe it still shocks people when that happens, when people use it to do evil. But I don't see how it's different from someone being killed on the streets or at work or at school. When someone dies at work, do we blame the company? I think not. So I really don't understand why people will blame the platform. It's not the internet, people, it's us. We are crazy. And these tragedies that happen through Couchsurfing or Airbnb or whatever platform it may be, they represent a very small percentage of, the transaction. Let's call them transactions. Most of them turn out okay. So it's proof that it's not the app that is, encouraging tragic events, murders, or, pedophiles hunting teenagers. It's us. It's people who are crazy. A killer will use all tools to do what he wants to do, to kill. Take the Night Stalker, for example. He didn't have internet. He still killed, we don't even know how many people. And that's just one example. I'm pretty sure that Narayan would have killed, if not Dahlia, probably someone else. She was there. It was an opportunity. He killed her. Maybe it was to rape her. Maybe it was for the money and the iPhone. I don't think we'll ever know. But that happened. It was a crime of opportunity. Also, don't forget that most people get killed by someone they know, a family member, a lover, a friend, a colleague, a neighbor. You are much more likely to get killed by the hands of someone you know than by the hands of a stranger. Refusing to meet strangers online is not what's going to keep you alive. And I also want to specify here that Dahlia used the platform in a very safe way. Yes, granted, she didn't give the name, she didn't give the address, but she was safe in the way that she approached a future host. She made sure they had references, she made sure that they were all positive, and this is how Couchsurfing tells you to use the platform, to use their website. Everybody who had met Narayan through Couchsurfing left him a very positive review, so she had no reason to believe, to think, to suspect that this could happen to her. So please, I beg of you, do not blame the victim. It's very easy to say that she was stupid and spent 3 nights with a total stranger at his house. It's very easy to say that. She was careful. She did everything she had to do. She did everything right. What happened was not her fault. If you blame the victim, and at least in this case, it's just like saying a woman got raped because she was wearing a miniskirt or because she was outside in the streets by herself. Does this mean women shouldn't be allowed outside by themselves? You can extend this logic to everybody on the planet. If you don't want to get killed by a stranger, don't travel, don't talk to anyone you don't know, don't leave your house, stay at home. Cosmic bullshit. That's what I mean when I talk about the fear that paralyzes you. If you extend that logic of stranger danger to every situation, to everything, you don't leave your house. You just stay home because you're afraid that someone will kill you, someone you don't know will kill you, or you'll get hit by a bus. Cosmic bullshit. Now let's talk about couchsurfing. I feel like it's important for me to clarify a few things for 2 reasons. The first one is that I'm a user of this platform, so I want to share my experience and, most importantly, my knowledge on the matter. And the second one is that I understand why people would have strong reactions to this case. Some people may have questions, very valid questions that I do understand, but these questions mostly come from lack of knowledge of the whole process, how things work, and also from, again, fear of the unknown, fear of a different situation, fear of leaving your comfort zone. The first time I used Couchsurfing, I was planning a trip to either India or South Korea. I hadn't decided yet, so I reached out to a few potential hosts in both countries. There was this guy in South Korea who responded to me and he said, "Your profile is recent, you have no, what Couchsurfing calls references, so you have to build it up. You have to build up your profile." So the reference system is a way for members to give each other a sort of validation after meeting up. So the first step would be to meet someone in real life through the app. I met this person in real life. We did this, we did that. We went to the park, we went for coffee. They're nice, whatever. You get the gist. So this guy tells me that, to build up my profile, I should meet travelers. I mean, you can also meet locals, but ideally travelers, and you can show them around. You meet them in public places. You don't have to host if you don't want to, if you're not comfortable doing that. But yeah, so you meet them and you're sort of tour guide in your city, and that's how you get your first few references. You can meet one-on-one, or you can also meet through, I think Couchsurfing calls that events. For example, in Paris, there's a language exchange every Tuesday, same place, same time, and you can just, sign up, go there, and meet a bunch of people. You also have spontaneous events like, picnic next Sunday, or movie, or game night, or whatever it may be. And similar gatherings happen also through Facebook or Meetup. If you're not familiar with Meetup, I really love this app. The first time I used it was when I was in coding school. I attended a lot of, conferences related to coding, and that was super interesting. I went to Facebook's HQ in Paris. It was pretty amazing. The food was really amazing, and it was free, so free food is always great. So yeah, that's basically what I did. I met people in Paris, showed them around, I built up my profile, and then I traveled. I decided to go to India, and then I went to Korea later that year. But yeah, so I had a built up profile, and it was easier for me to find hosts and also to have people stay with me at my place because they felt safer staying with someone who already had references, if that makes sense. It does make sense. I just explained it, so it does make sense. Now, you remember when I said that Dahlia had not logged on to her profile for 12 days? The reason that it was a lot is because usually the pattern when you're surfing on people's couches is that you will stay with the same host, the same person, for 2, 3, 4 days. The average is like 3 days, 3 nights, and then you move on to someone else or someplace else. I like to switch. I personally like to switch. I'll do a little bit of couch surfing, then Airbnb, then maybe hostel or hotel. If you're on a very small budget, you don't switch. You just go from couchsurfing host to couchsurfing host because it's much cheaper. I don't know if Dahlia was doing that, if she was switching or if she was not switching, only exclusively using couchsurfing, but even if she was switching, 12 days is a long time without texting anyone, without messaging anyone through the app, because you don't only use it to find a couch, you also use it to meet up with people. I don't know, I think it was just weird that she would not log onto her profile for 12 days. It's just a very long time. I only have good things to say about Couchsurfing. I'm not sponsored. I wish, but I'm not. Even if you don't use the surfing or hosting feature, you can use other features like, the events or hanging out, and you can just meet up with people, with locals or travelers like you, and do stuff together. It's a pretty fun way to meet people when you're traveling and do something together, like, visit a museum or a landmark or the Eiffel Tower, whatever it may be that you want to do when you're traveling. For some reason, I had never used the weekly meetups, in a bar, because they happen in most cities around the world, and I had never done that. I don't know why I was never attracted to it, at least not in Paris for some reason, but I did go to one in Bangkok. I was in Bangkok and I was like, I don't know why, I just want to do it tonight. So I did. And when I got to that bar, to that place, everybody was from Couchsurfing. It was about 40 of us, and it was people from Thailand, it was people from France, people from Germany, Austria, Australia, New Zealand, the USA, Canada, from all over Asia as well. It was such a nice melting pot. It was incredible. You had a conversation with, a group of like, 4 or 5 people here, and then you switch and you go there, and it was just so interesting, and I regretted not doing that sooner. It was an incredible time. I really recommend to anyone who likes, you know, other cultures, other people, practice a language as well. You just, go on the platform, you meet people, or you can host if you want to host, or you can be hosted if you want to be hosted. It's just a fun way to meet people when you travel, or even when you're not traveling. I'm just gonna finish by saying this. A lot of the people that I met when I traveled, or people that I hosted, they are still my friends to this day. I could dedicate an entire video to the people that I met on my travels, and not just people that I met through Couchsurfing or Airbnb, even people that I just, met in museums or restaurants or wherever. I've traveled so much, but I'm still amazed at how crazy it can be that you meet someone who lives on the other side of the globe. They are completely different from you. They don't have the same culture. They don't speak the same language, but a very strong friendship can arise from that. There's beauty in the differences between you. You gotta love people though. Like, I know that some people don't. They travel and just go to a hotel and they stay there and they don't talk to anybody. That's not me. I love people. I love talking to people. I love listening to people. Traveling is life. Eating is also life. Transition to the random item review. So tonight we're talking food again. It's not gonna be the last time. We're talking food, cooperatives, CSA, sustainable fishing and farming, how to buy local produce, and why. There are different ways of doing this. You can either find a co-op near you and you can just, go there and shop and buy whatever you need, or you can be a member and you can have a say in how they run the place. And some of these co-ops, they even offer a discount to their members. I don't know in details how they work, so research it and call one that is close to you, but I just know that you either need to have a membership or you can just, go and buy whatever you want. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture, so it's a similar system except you pay in advance for your produce. I'm going to talk about one CSA that's close to me because I know how they function, and I think most of them function the same way. There's one close to me that is called Market on Water. It's simply because it's this boat that travels through the canal and stops at certain points, and they sell their produce, which is pretty cool and romantic and very Parisian to buy your fruits and vegetables on a canal. Very French. So with the boat, you have two options, and a lot of CSAs work this way. You have the first option of just getting a membership, and the one that's close to me is 20 euros per year, and then you just go in and you can, buy whatever produce and products that they have. The second option is that you pay in advance for what they call a basket. So they will prepare a basket and you choose the size. So you have, small, medium, large, depending on how many mouths you have to feed. So you pick your size and you pay in advance for 10 baskets. And then every week, the same day, you go and you pick it up. So what you'll have in your basket, or if you're just buying without having the basket option, is fresh, locally grown fruits and vegetables, and also herbs and plants and stuff like that, but it's mostly fruits and vegetables. You also have dairy products. Sometimes you also have meat and honey, craft beer, soup, jams, just everything that you can consume that is made locally. The reason I love this system is because not just because it's romantic because it's on the canal, but it's also because it's good. Obviously, it's good for the environment. You're not having, produce that is being shipped from Costa Rica or South Africa. I don't have anything against those countries. I've been there actually. I love their food, but I love it when I'm there, not when I'm here. So it's good for the environment because of shipping. I mean, there is no shipping. And it's also good for the environment, as in they don't use, I mean, at least for the market on the water, they don't use chemicals or pesticides. They only use natural fertilizers. And in case you didn't know, the regulations when it comes to farming are different from one country to the next. So a certain chemical that is not allowed in France, for example, could be allowed in another country. And if I go to the supermarket, I could buy produce from that country and I would still have those chemicals, even though they are technically not allowed in my country. This system is also good for biodiversity because, in case you didn't know, mass production has eradicated a lot of varieties of plants and fruits and vegetables because they only farm, like a few varieties of, say, potatoes or tomatoes or whatever it is. It's not good for nature. It's not the way nature functions. And that is why, among other things, that is why wheat has much more gluten today than it did 50 years ago. That's why gluten-free is a thing now. It's people think it's trendy. It really isn't. A lot of people have developed sensitivity to gluten, like me. We messed with nature. Nature isn't happy about it. I will leave a couple videos in the description box, videos that explain in much more detail the system of, CSA and co-ops and what they call short, I think in English they also call it short circuit farming because it is like in a short circuit, like it doesn't go outside of the local community. If you already knew about it, please leave a comment and tell me what you think of these healthy options. And also please confirm that the produce tastes much, much, much nicer than the ones that you find in supermarkets. I did promise a subscriber that next week's case was going to be Albert Fish, so this is what's coming up. If you have any suggestions, please leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to support the channel. I thank you very much, and I will see you soon. Bye.